Great. I'm going to hand it over to Norman Yatú. Please take over.
Awesome.
Well,
Thank you so much. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Education is definitely a soft spot of ours, and I think we'll do it for the rest of our lives. And maybe we'll see why even more by the time we go through all this. Formally, I am Yatú, head of reality, and
I'm Norm, head of fiction at Fill in the Blank Incorporated, which is doing business as USB Film.
we've been making things our whole life together. And we've been exploring, and throughout this, we found a methodology that really resonates and think that it's deserving for people who are trying to discover what they want to do in life. And college is typically the sweet spot of like understanding where that is. But in reality, you can do it at any phase in life. And so while we may be known for working on something like USB Club, this talk is actually more centered around the notion of careering. So for those who don't know, there's this term careering that's not a made-up word, it's an actual word. And throughout this, we'll learn more about it. And what it does is it provides an alternative model to move throughout your work life. Something that a lot of people think about, but don't often have spaces to discuss. And so hopefully this workshop acts as a catalyst for that. Some background on us, we met by throwing a hackathon together in college. And we also went to a lot of hackathons, and we created statewide hacker communities. And really the through line there, only realizing this in hindsight by connecting the dots backwards, is that it was a way for us to hack our curriculum. It was a way for us to augment our educational environment because we were able to learn with students from other schools. We were able to learn subjects like design that wasn't offered at our school over a weekend at somewhere else, and develop lifelong relationships on road trips with people. And so we found a through line in community building, craftsmanship, and education. And through this, we questioned what does it mean to make something that isn't just, to be a startup company? What does it mean to make something that isn't just valued primarily on utility? And by doing that, we discovered art. And so discovering art gave us a new perspective of understanding how we can create beauty in the world and find poetic meaning. And so we created this thing called Teal Process and Company, which is always an open question and acts as a container for us to be able to fluidly make anything that we want to see in the world. After graduating, we went to 9-to-5 jobs. I went to IBM, Norm went to Plaid, went on to separate coasts, went to New York, Norm went to SF. And then, Norm's heart, I think, was also still in New York, even though they're in SF because of how much it values art. And so they came back and we became roommates again, and we made art. Through this, we also created an educational environment called Leave Room for Thoughts. We opened up a studio. We had no plans for it and realized we were doing the same exact thing that we were doing at hackathons. We had a space, we had tools, but really what's a space without people? Because that's what gives it life. And so we invited people over and helped them make whatever they wanted to make. And then in hindsight, looking back, we're like, what was that? And I was like, well, that's an educational institution. Who is to say we're not allowed to create one? And so from that, we created a campus, connected a bunch of locations in New York together, and ran a fellowship and gave learners in the fellowship access to all these locations. And then there was, I think, another milestone we wanted to hit to see what it was like. And I was starting a company and starting a startup, which is something that often gets championed a lot in the career model. And we're like, all right, let's get our hands and feet dirty and see what it really takes and learn what it means to start a company. And that company now is USB Club. So what is USB Club? It means a lot of different things to many people, but if we had to distill it down, it's a social file exchange for people who are designers, artists, DJs, writers, musicians, research engineers, and the list goes on. And this world of USB Club expands pretty massively. First, it starts with the core of the USB itself, which people think it's outdated because they think about the type A side. And we see this as a transitional object that also works with the Type-C size, so much so that we see it being a complement to all the future new hardware devices that are being made as USB-C becomes more popular. So we created an ATM machine that you see here on the left that prints out a receipt. It's like a downloadable content in real life. So if you go to an event, the host can distribute unique events to its audiences, and we built this. We've also created a desktop and mobile app that allows you to share files with people across the world, and your USB turns into a key that gives you access. And so it's kind of like a daily thing. So if you share a file today, you can get my file. If you share a file and you have the USB, and then the cool little thing about this is that you can also make what we call a pro file, because the word file is in profile. So whatever file you identify with can be your profile. It's like a new identity layer. And we support other things because, you can't share a PDF on Twitter. You can't, share a 3D object on Instagram. And so communities like industrial designers and researchers also have a new place to find other people. And so that's how it's been growing and proliferating. But our focus here isn't primarily to talk about USB Club and what we've accomplished, but more so how we got here and how we think about how we move throughout our work life. So back to careering. We all know career as a noun, which I would just say very, explicitly, as the Google says, which I think pulls from Oxford, an occupation undertaken for a significant period of a person's life and with opportunities for progress. Okay, I think we get that. But if you look it up right now and you type in define career on Google, you see that it's also a verb. We did not make this up. It means to move swiftly in an uncontrolled way in a specified direction. So it's like careening almost. It's kind of like, and so in order to depict this a bit, often we can see these ladders that companies and organizations put together, and even institutions, where it says you can grow, you can get promoted, and you can work your way towards that career. But you didn't design that ladder, you didn't design that methodology. With the verb, it's more about swerving into other lanes, being able to move and understand where you want to go and what feels comfortable to you. And these are often dictated by our environments. And so a good priming question that you can write down and think about is, who decides what we think about? It's a really important question because it kind of, talks about the agency of our headspace that we have in the work we do. Oftentimes it can start at home with your parents saying, you're going to be a good lawyer, or you're going to be an architect, or you're going to be whatever, pays really well. And then you go to school and school's like, all right, you made it here. Pick what you're going to focus on. What's your major? Because, that's what you need to focus on. And then when you want to get a job, they're like, what job role are you going to pick? And these are all environments that we're in that influence our careers. Here's a way to diagrammatically think about it. And hopefully it feels familiar. You pick an industry, which is a lane. And in that lane, there's roles. And in the roles, you can pick your ladder and how you grow. And then if you want to do something else, it's for window watching only. It's a little too late. You can't do that other thing. In careering, we're saying, oop, you can swerve, get into a different lane, even ones that potentially don't even exist. And so our environments encourage us to be able to discover these roles. And this is kind of the mental model that we're here to discuss about. So Norman's going to talk about a way of how to do that with waypoints.
Yeah. Okay. So we have these two models. We have the career model of Climb the Ladder, and then we have kind of the what sounds more chaotic of the careering model, thinking of the career much more as a journey. And so one thing that we found helpful is instead of focusing on career goals, where you'll often get asked like, okay, what's your 5-year career goals? What's your 10-year career goals? And then you start judging yourself on, okay, did I hit that career goal? Like it's been 5 years, did I do it? Instead of that, just thinking of those as careering waypoints. So it's like, okay, here is either a craft or an environment or role or something that you want to head towards. And then you're just judging yourself on, did you start heading that direction? Because what's probably going to happen is once you start heading that direction, you're going to find some other stuff and you're going to find some other directions that you could kind of turn to and move towards those. And so we consider this, okay, let's think about careering waypoints instead. what this can lead to is thinking about a waypoint map. So we found some out in the world. One, this is from like 2010's Ye's Donda chart, where organizationally he was mapping out like, okay, we're gonna go tackle all this stuff, like lifestyle, consumer finance, banks, planes, trains, internet. And so this is one where it's looking at the future. Then we got another one from Virgil, where this is one that I think him and his team put together looking at his past. So this is the timeline of kind of like disciplines and areas that he was diving into. So we got, you know, it goes sewing, skating, streetwear, graphic design, architecture, DJing, also internet. And so this one kind of goes all over the place as well. And then I did a waypoint map. This is mine from a couple years back. And I kind of just started with, okay, where am I at now? Where does it feel like I am now? And where does it feel like I could head? And once I was looking at it, it felt like I was trying to explore kind of going from known structures and known ways of working to more unknown. And so I jotted this little note at the bottom that says novel pursuits are both the journey and goal, which I think is akin to kind of how you think about careering, in that it's much more thinking about the journey than hitting a very specific destination, because you'll probably just keep going. So these are all examples of waypoint maps, and they should be kind of very unique to each individual. So what we can try now is some reflection time on how you can career. So if everyone wants to take a minute to grab a pen and some paper, take your piece of paper. What I like to do is fold it in half and crease it. So fold it in half lengthwise, and then get a good crease there, just so you have sections to use. Go ahead, crease that. And it should look like that. Very simple. Okay, now pick one side, and we're going to start with one half. So first up, we're going to think about environments. So what environments do you want to spend more time in? This can be pretty as broad as you want of how to think about what an environment is to you. And so I'll give everyone, let's do, how are we doing on time? We're doing decent time. I'll give everyone 2 minutes. And what you're going to want to do is on that left side, just jot down, mind map all the environments that you can think of that you want to spend more time in. Maybe there's some that you want to spend less time in. All right. And I'm going to start the timer now.
You want to Spotify it?
Yeah, we can do some. All right, got about a minute left. Couple more seconds. Alrighty, so now we're gonna move on to the next one, which is roles. So what roles do you want to explore? You're gonna go ahead and use the other side of the sheet of paper, and we definitely encourage thinking about new role titles. Some that we've played around with have been, well, you heard head of reality, head of fiction. We also see ourselves as artist founders. We've also practiced roles such as concept composing, and concept librarian. So definitely kind of just let your mind think of what are the roles you want to explore. And again, we'll give 2 more minutes for this.
Yeah, so you can make your own role up as well.
Yes.
UX design really wasn't a thing, it was a thing, but it wasn't labeled like 200 years ago, There's gonna be new roles in the future as well.
Alrighty, 2 minutes, go. Got about a minute left. Give a couple more seconds. Alrighty, now we're gonna move on to the third activity, which is waypoints. So you're gonna sketch out a waypoint map. Now that you have some environments in mind, some roles in mind, what you're gonna wanna do is start with just marking anywhere on the page what now feels like to you, whether that's based on environment or craft or role. And then from there, start sketching out waypoints and go as far as you can, just kind of exhaust your brain of the waypoints that you can imagine right now. It could all be a linear journey. It could be, going all over the place. However you see your waypoints map. We're gonna do a little bit longer on this. We'll do 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Cool. Alrighty, and go. Oh, and you can do this on the back side of your paper or a new sheet of paper.
Hey, Norm, we have a questions.
Yeah. Connecting the two sides. Yes. So what we mean by that is just kind of taking into account like the environments and these roles could be waypoints that you're heading to. So it's kind of saying, okay, here's some brainstorming that I've done of roles and environments, and now what could that look like of how I actually career and either move about them or just move about as you career.
Some people are motivated by where they work. Other people are motivated by what they do. And so connecting the two can help as inputs on understanding what waypoints feel most appropriate. So it was basically the first two questions were to get inputs to act as indicators of where it would feel best to land as waypoints in your career.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Thanks, Kyle.
Oh, sorry, still about a USB.
Yeah, an example. Yeah, we gave a couple examples. Well, but it's also, I mean, I think whatever it feels like, because a map could be a list of things. A map could be a literal map with points, with lines between them.
Here are the
But yeah.
examples. This is Kanye's example. Ye, formerly known as Kanye. This is Virgil's example, and this is Norm's. So I said Norm used to be in SF. So Norm did this when they were at a startup in SF. They knew they wanted to go to New York. It was in 2019. A lot of agency work, we did some. Research group, we joined one. Educational learn startup, we did campus complex, other internet, and conceptual firm. So we did all these things. Creative research, I feel like we're doing that now. Learning environments, kind of out, and the new and novel is definitely USB Club. So this is an example, and here is a linear example of how it goes from a known structure and increasingly unknown. So these are all different ways, and there's no wrong way to do it. And these can also inherently, oh, nice. And these are also inherently very personal as well.
Okay, we're gonna give another minute.
Okay.
Another minute. All right, we'll do a little longer. Finish up your thoughts. Jot them down on paper so you can return to them later. All righty. So the fourth optional step that you could do on your own time as well is make a moral compass. So if you can think of this as drafting a set of 4 values to use as kind of guiding directions while your career. So one for each direction on the compass. And you can think of this as like, okay, how do I want to evaluate the environments and roles and the waypoints map that you put together?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any last thoughts?
So like putting like a poetic punch in that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, well, think of the word evaluate. The word value is inherently there. We're driven by our values. And what you value can help direct you in understanding what feels best as well. And so when you have a waypoint and there's many different things on that waypoint, understanding where to go and using your values as principles to act as a key decision framework can really help you be congruent internally and externally with the work you do. Because the funny thing is that there's a concept out there and a theory that's been written that says work is a feeling that emerges from an activity. So sometimes people listen to music before they work out. Sometimes they listen to music before they even do work on their computer, their laptop. And it's a feeling that emerges. Almost some people call it like a flow. And so understanding how you want to feel when you're working can help you also evaluate what kind of work you want to do.
Totally. Nice, thanks.
Mhm.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. That was a bit of a speed run on careering. All of this is published on www.careering.life.
You can
That
put
is
these in the chat.
The Careering Fairgrounds. Yeah, we
Mhm.
can put them in the chat. And I think now we can open it up, spend some time on discussion, see what other questions y'all have. So yeah, thanks, y'all.
This is great. Thank you so much, Norman Yatú. If you have any questions for Norman Yatú, please, you can put them in the chat windows or you can raise your hand. Jesse will. Give you access to your microphone.
That one didn't work.
Well, so Norman Yatú, I do have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Is there an age limit for this exercise?
No.
No, that's funny. So we definitely see, so one aspect of learning environments that we think of is how can they be more age agnostic? And so someday would love to have like run a session where kind of every age group is represented in the room. And so yeah, definitely don't see it as being limited to ages, but rather the narrative for each age is probably slightly different. And like the words used or ways that you introduce people to the concepts. Like I was thinking about, okay, well, if you're going to, I don't know about, I mean, maybe toddlers, but if you go to toddlers, I don't know if they know what like a noun and a verb is yet, you know? So it's like, okay, well, there's different ways to think about a word, or like you just say definitions instead. But yeah, no, definitely not anti-ageism. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's great because that really gives me hope. Thinking about that change is still possible. Pushing 50 is definitely hope.
Yeah. These things are going to forever evolve. A waypoint won't always look like the way it does.
That's awesome.
I see Sim here has a question. The waypoint part was confusing. It seems this is the part we're trying to discover, but it's not clear how to connect the role and environment, then take tangible steps. I have my opinions, but I'm curious if you have any.
I think you should go.
Okay, great. Yes, if it's confusing, then that means it's probably right. Because this isn't a formula, like this is not a mathematical logical formula. This is very much intuition-based, speculative. It's like, if you're familiar with speculative design, this is speculating your future. No one on this earth can predict what the future is going to look like. And we're asking you to do that for yourself. And so how to connect these, and what I was talking about earlier about inputs and outputs, is that an environment influences your role. If you want to work outside, you should probably not have an office job. So an office job can indicate the limited set of roles you do. But if you want to work outside, then your environment and your role aren't compatible unless you find a way to make a new role to make it compatible. I'll give you an example. I love working outside and I love working in the sun. It gives me energy. The vitamin D actually helps. So, but a way I can do that with technology, because using a laptop outside is so harsh on the eyes, is using e-ink technology. And so I want to work on e-ink products, let's say, or help the proliferation of e-ink so that I can do the things that I do inside, outside. And that is something that I would put on my waypoint. So I hope that answers your question. And I just would reframe and rethink the way tangibility works when it comes to actually, getting to those points. Open Source Studio has a question. What's your question?
Hey, this is
Hey.
Kiara.
Hey,
Hello.
So, okay. So I really love what you guys talked about in terms of careering and moving in an uncontrolled way.
Yeah.
but I also love how it like I'm just thinking about it of how it actually encourages change.
Yes.
So my
important.
question is, let's say if you're someone that's in a role and you're unhappy and you just want to pivot, you're just like, this isn't for me,
Yeah.
I'm happy. Yeah, like how do you pivot and like what do you do to prepare to pivot and like change course?
Yeah. Yeah. I have thoughts, but
Yeah, I
normally
got some. I feel like one of the first things to do is find someone that you can
that's a
talk
good
to either learn more about that area that you're trying to go into, or can like help guide you either with relationships into that area. But I feel like finding another human that is like wherever in the direction that you're trying to head is a good first one.
Yeah.
Like I feel like with this is different, but like say I remember when we were doing hackathons and it'd be like, okay, kids going to learn for the weekend, and they'd be like, oh, I don't know what to do. And there was a general notion of, in terms of learning programming languages, it's like, hey, just learn whatever language your best friend knows, because you can always go to them with questions. So similarly, being able to find a friend or find another person to go to with all the questions that you're kind of wind up having. I
Yeah.
feel like that's a really good first step.
Yeah, and that's very apprenticeship model. There's also a peer apprenticeship model where if you're trying to do something like work on cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, or just say crypto, say you're trying to work on crypto and it's the year 2009, that's not being taught in school yet. But if you find someone else who's also interested at that at the same time, then you can have a peer apprenticeship. And that's a very strong signal that you're working on with someone on pioneering something that hasn't been discovered before. And that's another way of also seeing it, is like if you meet or find someone else that resonates with how you want to pivot, but there isn't societal structures that support that yet. And it's now up to y'all to like make that happen and inspire a generation for that to happen. So there's different ways to go about it, but I think those are some ways. Is that clear?
Super, super helpful. Thank you.
Of course. Cool. Read it?
Yeah. All right. What are some moral compasses that you've designed for yourself during an evaluation period?
Yeah.
Like, what does your north, south,
Yeah.
east, west look like? Pre-waypoint versus post-waypoint. Does it change? Great question. I will say that the moral compass is a new addition to the theory. Yes. If you want to talk about that one, Kirk.
Yeah. So yeah, we did a careering workshop with some friends, and I don't know how much it matters in north, south, east, west, specifically directionally before. But if I had to, if my memory is good,
I have them too.
you have them?
I think I can find
physically
in Finder. No.
Oh, okay. How fast do you think you can pull it up? This is very personal. But yeah, mine is, I remember there was integrity. I remember there was encouragement. Let me see. I'd rather let Norm find it out. Let's see. Scanner Club. Let's see.
Trying to do yours.
I'm not trying to, but I
can do mine
compass.
too.
There's a compass. Yeah, there it is. Acceptance, encouragement, curiosity, and trust. I thought transparency was the right one, but transparency isn't always good. So trust, encouragement, acceptance, and curiosity are values that that I use, and that can change with time, but they typically don't. And I'll tell you why. Because with the other one, unless you want to show yours, Norm, you do?
I mean, I can. I mean, I think they're similar.
Okay.
Values. Ones I laid around was encouragement, growth, liveliness, kind of a sense of liveliness in design, and optimism.
Yeah. So if you go back to the this deck we put together, there's this kind of like funnel that we found where it's like there's the beliefs of work, which is like could be just the values. And then there's your intuitions, the methods, and outcomes. And the outcomes are sometimes things that people really focus on, of like, hey, this is the outcome, this is the goal, hit that outcome, and forget everything else. And really, actually, the way life we found work is outcomes are a byproduct. of your belief of work, your intuitions, and your methods. Your belief of work is the values. Your intuition is your guidance on how you get there. Your methods is how you get there, and your outcome is just the byproduct and the of itself. And yeah, so
Nice.
yeah, we just had this as an appendix. Let me see if there's any other questions.
Also, let us know if that makes sense.
Yes. How do y'all figure out which feelings are worth pursuing? I would say the compass.
Yeah, the compass.
But unless you have a different question.
Yeah, no, I think, oh, there was also well, a different way that I had thought about the compass was the code of practice.
Yes.
And that was earlier one where it was similar, where I think the 4 I had was create conceptually, embed emotion, encourage exploration, and I forget the 4th one. But every now and then I feel like I would check in with myself of like, do I feel like I'm like working with others that are kind of heading in those directions?
Yeah. Kyle, yes, trust is the number one most economical, valuable thing in the world. That's key, that's some knowledge there. Cool, thanks for sharing. You're welcome. What are your thoughts on the nobility of work? No, damn.
Jobs.
That's a tough question.
I'd have to look up the
I think
definition.
I would have, look it up real quick.
Okay.
And then I think that my intuition tells me that nobility is relative. Especially when we're talking about what justice looks like.
Yeah, hereditary class. I feel like it gets a little political. So by noble, highborn. Yeah, it feels very like prestigious.
I think it's all relative of what people think is noble, and I think it's political status. So it's like what political ideologies do you identify with and believe in are going to be probably the frameworks that actually identify what is noble or not. I don't think nobility is actually objective. And I think that you can find nobility within yourself by ensuring that the morals and just being honest with yourself and congruent about the kind of work you do and how you feel about the work you do and where you're at with the standards of the work you do is where you probably find nobility within yourself. But seeking nobility from others in the work you do is a market force that I think is, in my opinion, out of your control.
This one.
How did you move to the startup stage and being self-sufficient? Yeah, that one was, we did exactly what Norm said. Find other people who did it before us and other peers who are doing it at the same time. That was the best way to get education around how to move, because startups aren't going to look the same forever, and they don't look like what they used to in the past either. And I think that it's very easy for people to think that startups are just like this equation way of making a lot of money quick because of its inherent characteristic of scale. And achieving that scale, you can probably get advice from like accelerator programs like Y Combinator and just be like, oh, do this, do this, do this, do this. But I found a lot of truths just talking to the people who have gone through it themselves. I think people who have gone through firsthand experience on the questions I have typically are the closest to the truth of how things actually work, because what has been written of how actually things work isn't always true. And what are your thoughts?
I mean, +1. I think it's like, I think there's a lot of like advice published about it, stuff to read. And I think it is like, there's like a level of risk involved. But I think finding peers and finding folks to chat with to help navigate those transitions and the relationships that you need to build are like super important.
Good question, Sim. I guess it depends on how you define noble. Everything's how you define it, like baker, artisan, librarian. Yes. I think noble in relation to craft. Okay. Sword making mastery that I feel only still exists in Japan. Oh, that gets into Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you're really good at this because you take a lot of pride in the crafts
Yeah.
you make.
Well, the craft, I think the craft, I feel like this to me feels more specific to each craft and like how you think about craft, because not everyone's gonna value those crafts the same way unless you have like a knowledge base about them and
Yeah.
an appreciation for them.
Yeah.
So I feel like it still kind of goes back to
Yeah.
what you said about nobility, and then it's more around like your personal ethos on how the world works and
Yeah.
what is good or bad.
If I had to guess and read in between the lines and take a risk of being wrong, I think you value wabi-sabi energy and I said it right?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's
And there's a lot of beauty and what you're referencing, Budo. All right, open source. So you got a question?
Hello,
Hello.
how's it going? Okay, so my question is around the concept or the thought of having a core practice. So I noticed that in the examples that you shared of like Ye as well as Virgil, both of them kind of have a core practice or like a foundational kind of practice. When you think of Virgil, you might think of like the t-shirt or you know, his creative thinking with Kanye earlier back in the day, his album artwork, etc. So how do you guys think about like your core practices and then like reconciling when you do take on kind of these waypoints, reconciling that into like your core practice or maybe the lens that you're looking through? I'm thinking of this question as I'm speaking. So
yeah, it's a good question. I'll answer mine. I think your might be different. For me, being able to look back and like I mentioned earlier, connecting the dots, I realized I don't know if I would frame it as much as a core practice and discipline, but more so as an indicator of making sure I'm in the environments I want to be in. And so for me, it's education. People learn on the job. You all the time, if you choose to, honestly, because you can have a job where you just don't learn anything. But I think and like I had curiosity, acceptance, encouragement, and trust as my moral compass. And I feel that genuine educational environments fulfill those morals where you're encouraged to learn, where it's accepted, where your curiosity is accepted. The trust layer, I think, is a little mudded in that. However, as long as I'm in an environment with others who want to learn and know that the core of what we're doing is to learn, then I feel like I'm in a place that ensures that I'm moving forward and I'm progressing and evolving. Now there's a difference between evolving, there's a difference between learning and just like getting the job done and making money, right? And I think those two things can be paired and also unpaired. If a business found a way to make a lot of money and it's just you do X, Y, Z, like, you know, if you're just delivering food, for an example, and you know this is what you have to do and you're just going to make X amount, you know, that's figured out. I lean more towards being in environments and being able to discover new ways of being able to be profitable and new ways to also, while at the same time being profitable, being able to learn and also push the standards of things. Like right now, I have an inherent motivation to push the boundaries in hardware. How does that become something that's profitable? That's a super tough thing that I have to figure out with my peers on how to make it possible.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
And objects, yeah.
And objects, I love that. I love that. Well, thanks again for coming in and for your insightful.
Is it okay if Norm shares their answers?
Oh,
to
of
that
course,
question?
of course.
Nice, cool. Yeah, and then I think we gotta close out and do some closing remarks. For me, the aspect of, I think Yatú and I have thought a lot about like what are the things that we're making. One of the first projects we did as Teal, we called it an online artifact because we were like, okay, we were going to hackathons and people were making websites and apps and stuff. We were like, what if we made a website that was just art and didn't have to have utility? And we were like, that's going to be an online artifact. So I feel like the notion of what is your core thing, that feels hard for me to answer because it feels like it's been shifting a lot. And it's also like, how is the like industry around those things shifting? But one thing I did want to bring up is this operational model that we have in teal. I drew it out, that Yatú drew out a while back. But at the top, we got concepts, and concepts become experiments, and experiments become artifacts. And so for us, for something to become an artifact, after experiment phase, it usually takes like at least a year for it to become an artifact. And so in terms of what is our core thing, if we had to pick one, would say artifacts, but that's so many types of things. So, so yeah.
It could be theoretical, digital, or physical.
Yeah. Yeah. So for us, it's a lot about the process as well. Okay.
So
cool.
yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Mohan.
Very cool. It actually kind of reminds me another class Salon that we host probably 2 years ago with Wanabe-san from Japan. He does the perfume installation. And I love the map that we're building right now because he also has a map that documents all his technology and its involvement throughout the years. And it's a life documentation. So that would imagine like this can be evolved into sort of the life form that you don't just plan for now, the future, you can continue document it and see the evolution that you have over time. I really like the concept. This is super cool. We have to do a few event announcements. But before that, thank you so much, Norm and Yatú, for coming in and share your wisdom with us. This is a time where a lot of our graduating students are going into the industry or starting their own career. This is definitely going to be super helpful for them to kind of figure out the initial steps. Whether or not they end up with the noble jobs or creating their own company, become an entrepreneur, this is a really good sort of a blue map for them. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Thanks for coming. See you later.